Good morning, church. Today I'm reading from Joshua chapter 2. Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim to look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, "Look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land." So the king of Jericho sent his message to Rahab, "Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land." But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. She said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the gate, they left. I do not know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them." But she had taken them up onto the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid out on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads out to the fords of Jordan. And as soon as the pursuers had gone, the gate was shut. Before the spies laid down for the night, she went up onto the roof and said to them, "I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did in Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death." "Our lives for your lives," the men assured her. "If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land." So she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived in was part of the city wall. She said to them, "Go to the hills so the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves there for 3 days until they return, then go on your way." Now the men had said to her, "This oath you made us swear will not be binding on us, unless when we enter the land you have tied this scarlet cord in the window through which you led us down, and unless you have brought your father and mother, your brothers, and all your family into your house. If any of them go outside your house into the streets, their blood will be on their own heads. We will not be responsible. As for those who are in this house with you, their blood will be on our heads if a hand is laid on them. But if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from this oath you made us swear." "Agreed," she replied. "Let it be as you say." So she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window. When they left, they went into the hills and stayed there for 3 days until the pursuers had searched all along the road and returned without finding them. Then the 2 men started back. They went down out of the hills, forded the rivers, and came to Joshua, son of Nun, and told him everything that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, "The Lord has surely given the whole land into our hands. All the people are melting in fear because of us." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Alex. Let's pray before we get started. Lord, thank you for this morning. Thank you for the opportunity to open your word and share it with these people. I pray that you will share your love with everyone here, and that you would speak through me, and that you would speak through the story of your daughter, Rahab. In your name I pray. Amen. Good morning. Good morning. Hi, everyone. Like Pat said, my name is McKenzie Alexander, and my husband Dan and I have been coming to St. Peter's for about a little over a year now. So we just absolutely love this church so much. We love the community, we love the people, and we love the truth that's spoken here every Sunday morning. But, and it just felt like home from the beginning. But as Pat alluded to, and as you might be able to tell from my accent, the UK has not always been my home. So I am originally, like Pat mentioned, from South Carolina in the US, and I lived there, went to uni there, and then moved to North Carolina, which is where I met my lovely British husband. And throughout us dating, we decided, we're going to get married, and then we decided, hey, why don't we move to the UK? But I didn't know much about the UK before living here. I had never left the country before I met Dan. So just like a proper American, was really going on a new adventure, dating a Brit, and then deciding to move here. So it was quite an adventure. And because I had not had much experience with British culture, when we moved here, probably did some things that people thought were quite odd, and I thought that things that people did were quite odd. One of the things that I encountered upon first moving here, there's a family, very generous, amazing family, that allowed us to live with them before we, got set up in London. And we lived in the countryside in Kent. And they were very generous, and they said, we're going to have these people over for dinner. Would you want to join us for dinner? And we said, absolutely. Well, they also said, well, would you mind making a pudding for the meal? And I said, absolutely. First, I need to figure out what a pudding is. I'm picturing like a milky, sweet substance, like very runny, very sweet, because to me, as an American, that's what a pudding is. Thankfully, I had my British translator say, no, it's just a dessert. Just make a dessert. Okay, great. I can do that. Now I have to go to the grocery store. Okay, I can do that. Now I'm looking through the aisles and all of the foods and, a courgette. What's a courgette? Do I put a courgette in a pudding? Answer is no, you absolutely do not. So there's all sorts of these different language barriers that made me feel a bit, out of place sometimes. What I learned about this is that, in British culture, hospitality is including people in a meal. In the US, we would say, you sit there, I'm going to take care of everything for you. But in British culture, this family was being generous by making me feel a part of the family. When a lot of times I didn't really feel like part of the family because I was an outsider, I was other, I didn't understand the culture here. And I wonder if any of us have ever felt like that in our lives, maybe not moving to a new country, but maybe, in your place of work. Maybe you're the only Christian in your place of work and you feel differently. Or maybe you have moved to a new place and you've had to learn what it looks like to operate in that new culture. Or maybe something has been done to you that you didn't choose, and people may or may not know about it, and that makes you feel different. It makes you feel other. We're going to talk about a character in the Bible who understands that feeling of feeling other. Pat, like he mentioned, we are in a sermon series called Courageous Faith. And a few weeks ago, Zach spoke about the making of a person of courageous faith, the making of courageous faith in the person of King David. And last week, Pat spoke about the healing of the paralytic and how it was actually his friends' courageous faith, where these friends brought the paralytic to the feet of Jesus through a roof because they couldn't get to him in any other way, and they figured out a way. And that was their courageous faith. And this week, I'm going to talk about courageous faith in an unlikely character, in the character of a woman named Rahab. So to set the scene before we dive into the story that we've just read, we are going to talk a little bit about God's people. So God's people are the Israelites, and they have been enslaved in Egypt for over 200 years. And their plight had become so difficult and so challenging that God decided to rescue them from their situation. So he rescued them out of Egypt. And then they wandered in the wilderness. So they wandered through the desert. And then God said, I am going to give you a new home. It's called the Promised Land. And it's the land of Canaan. And the land of Canaan is currently situated in, sort of encompasses Israel, Syria, Lebanon, the places that Pat just was visiting. And this is the promised land that God said to this people, his people, I will give you this land. And so the challenge is that there are people living in this land. So the Israelites have gone from Egypt on this journey, and they are now sitting on the border of Canaan, and the first city that they encounter is a city called Jericho. And that is where we meet the heroine of our story, Rahab. So we're going to pick up in Joshua 2, chapter 1, right here. So it says, Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent two spies from Shittim. Go and look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went, and they entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. So we learn a few things about this woman Rahab upon this first verse. We learn that she is a Canaanite. So Jericho is one of the main cities in the city of Canaan, or in the country or sort of area of Canaan. And what is it about the Canaanites? Well, their religion was polytheism. So the Canaanites believed in multiple gods. They had a different god that they worshiped for a different situation. Whether it was a god for fertility, a god of war, whatever their situation was and whatever they wanted, they were praying to that god for that situation. And culturally, it was a pretty corrupt culture and very violent. There was a lot of, the worship in the religion there was a lot of sexual rituals, temple prostitution, a lot of idolatry mixed with violence. And so Rahab, as a Canaanite, would have been viewed as other by the Israelites. They would have viewed her as different and other and potentially scary and dark, because this is the people that she comes from. We also find out that she is a woman. And the women of this time are treated as they're the lowest status in this group of people. They're treated as the property of the men that they belong to. And not only is she a woman, she's a prostitute, so the lowest of the low of the women. So even in this situation, in this day and age, this prostitute, she would have been poor, an outcast, not looked well upon, socially disposable. So as a woman, she would have had no value, and as a prostitute, she would have been looked at as one to be used. So this is the unlikely character that we have as our model of courageous faith. And the thing about God is that he doesn't look at our current situation or what we have been through. He looks at people who are looking to him. And so I'm going to highlight a few of characteristics of Rahab that highlight her courageous faith. And I like to think of things in a very simple way. And so I'm using an acronym or an acrostic, if anyone remembers doing those in school, where I'm going to use the first letter of Rahab's name and describe a characteristic about her with that, because that just helps me remember it. So maybe it'll help you remember it as well. So we're going to move through this story here in that way. So the first characteristic is that Rahab recognized who God was. So we're going to jump ahead to verse 8. If we can pick up there, perfect. And what's happened is, as we read earlier, the spies have come and she has hidden them. And Rahab is now speaking to the spies. So she said, Before the spies lay down for the night, they went up on the roof. And she said to them, Rahab said, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. We heard of it, and our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. So again, first thing, Rahab recognizes who God is. She recognizes the God of this people that are coming. And who does she say this God is? Well, we can find out in this passage. The first thing that she recognizes about this God is that he has power and authority. Well, she knows that because she says, I know that the Lord has given you this land. Well, she can't say that if it's first not his to give, right? So that's the power, or that's the authority. It's his land to give. And she also wouldn't say it if he didn't have the power to do so. So she wouldn't have said, I know that the Lord has given you the land, if she didn't recognize that this God had power and authority. The second thing that she recognizes is that this God is a deliverer. She says, we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you as you came out of Egypt. So she knows that God took his people out of Egypt and delivered them across the waters of the Red Sea, where the waters split so that they were able to escape from the people who were following them, the Egyptians who were following them. And he delivered his people. And so she recognizes that this God that I'm observing is a deliverer. She also recognizes that this God is just. She said, we also heard what you did to Sihon and Og, the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. These kings are kings of the Canaanites, and a common practice of this time was child sacrifice. And God knew this, and he condemned it. And he said, this is evil. And as the Israelites are passing through their land, they ask to pass through the land of Sihon and Og peacefully. And these kings wouldn't let them. And so God said, well, then you will be destroyed. And this is a show of God's justice, because God doesn't let evil go unpunished. So she recognizes that God has power and authority. He's a deliverer. He is just. And she also recognizes, most importantly, that this God is sovereign. She says in verse 11, everyone's curled failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. And this is revolutionary for Rahab to say this. Like I mentioned, she's a Canaanite, and Canaanites are polytheists. They believe in multiple gods. They believe in a God for every day of the week and different situations. And what she is saying is that she doesn't say your God or this God that I observe is a good God for, the water when it comes to parting the sea, or, he's not just a God for this day or that day. She says, this God is God. The Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. He is sovereign. He's it. I'm denying all of the other gods and saying this God is it. And the point of this is that this God is the object of our courageous faith. And that is so important, that we have a correct object of faith, and that this God is worthy of our faith. So Rahab, she recognized who God was. Second, Rahab aligned herself with God and his people. So we'll jump back to verse 2. If we can go back one, perfect. So Rahab says, the king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab: bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. But the woman had taken the two men and hidden them. She said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it came time to close the city gate, they left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax that she had laid out on the roof. There were implications for Rahab's courageous faith. She was going against the grain of so many things when she did this. She's going against the grain of her culture. So she's basically saying, as she's recognized that God is God and is the single God, she's against all of her people, which I'm sure makes her not popular. Imagine if this was maybe a few days before the Israelites got here, and everybody in the town is talking. The Israelites are coming, they're coming, what do we do? They've done all these things. And Rahab says, what if they've got the right thing going on here? What if they actually believe in the right God? Can you imagine what their response to her might have been? No, absolutely not. One God? How could there be one God? We worship, 10 or 12 or however many. How could there just be one God? You're ridiculous, Rahab. An outcast, not popular for what she believes. And probably pretty alone. Imagine what it must feel like to say that you believe in something and you really think that it's true and nobody else agrees with you. How tough that must be to feel alone. But Rahab also risked punishment. She lies to the king of Jericho. The king of Jericho sends her a note and says, bring out these spies. And she says, they're not here. Clearly, she risked punishment for her belief. And I think that's something that we find ourselves in culture all the time, that we risk persecution for our faith. And we, believing what we believe as Christians, will constantly put us at odds with our culture. Faith demands allegiance. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do with courageous faith? So the point is, courageous faith will increasingly put us at odds with the world around us. So, Rahab recognized who God was. She aligned herself to him and his people. And what does she do next? She displays a hope. She hopes for salvation. We pick up in Joshua 2 verses 12 through 13. This is Rahab speaking to the spies. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. Rahab is seeing what's coming. She knows that the Israelites have destroyed cities before. And she knows what's coming for her city, for Jericho. There is destruction coming. And she recognizes who God is, she aligns herself, but now she's hoping for salvation from this destruction. But the key point here is that she doesn't just hope for salvation for herself. She also hopes for salvation for her family. She says, spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them. This is what happens when we love someone. We want them to experience the same love that we have. There's an incredible quote that Charles Spurgeon had in a great sermon on Rahab. And Charles Spurgeon says this: "For it is impossible heartily and really to believe a thing without desiring to make others believe the same. And I am sure of this, moreover, it is impossible to know the value of salvation without desiring to see others brought in." Imagine the beginning stages of dating, when you're getting to know someone and you're really excited and you want to know everything about them and they want to know everything about you. You want to share everything that you love with them. Like, I want you to see my favorite movie, and, we have to try my favorite ice cream shop. Because, I know how life-changing this pistachio ice cream is, and I want you to experience it too. I want you to experience how life-changing it is. That is what we do. That is our natural reaction to things that we believe in and things that change us and that we're passionate about. We don't want to keep it for ourselves. We want others to experience it too. And the point here is that courageous faith desires to see other people saved as well. So next, we have that she recognized who God was. She aligned to him and his people. She hoped for salvation. And next, she acted. She acted to save the spies before she was assured of her own safety. So we pick up in verse 15. So Rahab let them, the spies, down by a rope through the window, for the house that she lived in was part of the city wall. She said to them, "Go to the hills so that the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves there 3 days until they return, and then go on your way." And then we'll jump ahead to verse 21. Agreed, she replied, "Let it be as you say." So she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window. Rahab is still at risk here. The spies are still in her home as we speak. If she has lied to the king, and if people find out that she has been hiding them as they escape, her life is on the line. And this is an incredibly risky move. And then she's also at risk because she doesn't really know if this is going to work. She doesn't know if the Israelites are going to win. She believes it. She believes what she's seen. But there's no assurance that the Israelites will actually destroy Jericho like she thinks that they will. So she's taking a risk here. And then she also doesn't know if they will honor their word. She doesn't know that these spies, that they actually will do what they say that they're going to do. She doesn't know. She's from a different country, a different culture. She's never encountered these people before. She doesn't know. There's no assurance that she has. But she acts in spite of her fear and in spite of her uncertainty. She trusts what she's seen, and she trusts what she's heard. And the main point here is that courageous faith moves us to action in spite of our fear and in spite of our uncertainty. We actually hear a little bit more about Rahab in the Bible, a good 1,200 years after this situation, in the book of James. In the book of James, chapter 2, there's another letter that's written to a group of people. And again, 1,200 years after this happens. And they're talking about characteristics of courageous faith. And they're saying, this letter is saying these are examples of courageous faith in the past. And it says in James chapter 2, verse 18, "Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by what I do. You believe that there is one God, good. Even the demons believe that and shudder." But what was not our ancestor Abraham considered righteous for what he did when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? In the same way, was not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction? As the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. Our faith moves us to action, as it does with Rahab. So what's the result of all of this? So Rahab has recognized, she's aligned, she's hoped, and she's acted. But what's the result of her faith? The result is this, that Rahab belonged as a part of the Israelite family. In Joshua, we go to Joshua 20. She says, "But I tell you what we are doing." We're going to 21, yes. So she sent them away, and they departed. When they left, they stayed in the hills for 3 days. And they searched all along the road and returned without finding them. Then the 2 men started back. They went down out of the hills, forded the river, and came to Joshua, son of Nun, and told him everything that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, "The Lord has surely given us the whole land into our hands, and the people are melting in fear because of us." And then we jump ahead to Joshua 6, and we get the result of the story. Great. So Joshua said to the 2 men who spied out the land, "Go into the prostitute's house and bring her out, and all who belong to her, in accordance with your oath to her." So the young men who had done the spying went in and brought out Rahab, her father and her mother, her brothers and sisters, and all who belonged with her. They brought out her entire family and put them in a place outside the camp of Israel. And then we jump ahead. But Joshua spared Rahab, the prostitute, with her family and all who belonged to her, because she hid the men Joshua had sent as spies to Jericho, and she lives among the Israelites to this day. So this book, Joshua, was written to the Israelites. So when it was originally written, it was a reminder to the Israelites when they were living in Canaan, in the Promised Land. It was a reminder to them about how they got there and who they were. And so this letter, people probably would have recognized Rahab. They would have said, when they're reading this book or this chronicle, they would have said, "Oh, I know Rahab. She's the lady who lives down the street. She's the one who teaches my kids in school. We know Rahab. She's our neighbor. She's a part of our community." They would have known her. She would have been a part of their community. Rahab went from being an outsider in her community, in Canaan, in Jericho, to being an insider with a specific purpose and a specific place. It doesn't matter her background. Because of her courageous faith and the power and purpose of God, she was welcomed in to the community with a new home, a new identity, and a new purpose. And it's great. It's a great story, isn't it? But so what? What's the purpose of all of this? It's a lovely story about a woman a long time ago. She's got a great model of courageous faith that we can apply to our lives. But how does that touch us today? And how does that impact the greater picture? The point is that God uses Rahab's courageous faith and action as a part of his greater redemption plan for the world. So, just like Rahab, we all have the ability to make choices in our lives. We all choose how we want to act, what we want to do. And really, from the beginning of time, when God created us, he gave us the ultimate choice. He created us in his image because he loved us, and he wanted a relationship with us, and he wanted to know us. And he gave us a choice. He said, choose him, to be in relationship with him, to follow him, to love him, to know him, or to choose ourselves, to choose the way that we want to operate, the choices that we want to make, to do life our way. And like Rahab, we all chose ourselves. We choose to turn our backs on the God that created us. And we said, thanks, but no thanks. We want to do life our way, the way that we choose, the way that we want. Romans 3:23 says, "For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God." We all have, every single one of us. And ultimately, that sin leads to destruction. Just like Jericho. Jericho was a city that was full of sin, and it was destined for destruction. And we are on that path. When we choose ourselves, when we choose sin, our path is destruction. And Rahab saw that. Romans 6:23 says, "For the wages of sin is death." The payment of sin is death. We all get to make this choice, but there's a payment required for that choice. And so the payment is death. And that's what we deserve. But the good news is that God knew that. God knew that we would turn our backs on him and that we would choose ourselves. And he said, I'm not done yet. God put a plan of redemption in place from the beginning of time. He's always wanted to save his people because he created us because he loves us and he wants to be in a right relationship with us. Our past doesn't define us. What defines us is the God that we put our trust in. So, what was his plan? God's plan was, all right, I am going to come from heaven to earth in the form of a human and live the life that we should have lived and die the death that we should have died. And this human's name is Jesus Christ. And Jesus paid the price to make our relationship right with God again, to take us from turning our backs on God to giving us the ability to be face to face with him so that we can be in right relationship with him again. So the other part of that verse I mentioned, Romans 6:23, for the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through belief and faith in Jesus Christ. Courageous faith, if we might add. So what does this have to do with Rahab? Well, God is always looking to use willing people with courageous faith in him to accomplish his purposes for their good and for his ultimate purposes in the world. How do I know this? Because we jump ahead to another book in the Bible, Matthew, chapter 1. The genealogy of Jesus. It's a lot of names. We won't read the whole thing, but we'll get an idea. This is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the Savior, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar, Perez of Hezron, Hezron of Ram, Ram of Aminadab, Aminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. And then we jump ahead a few verses to verse 15. Continuing the lineage, an unbroken chain of a family line. Then we have Eliud, the father of Eleazar, Eleazar, the father of Matan, Matan, the father of Jacob, and Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary. And Mary was the mother of Jesus, who was called the Messiah. Rahab wasn't just honored for her courageous faith in the one true God in her new family of Israel. She became an integral part of the redemption story that God had for the rest of the world. My closing point is that your past doesn't define you, and your present doesn't disqualify you. God's purpose for your life is greater than your failures, and it's bigger than your current circumstances. By aligning yourself with the one true God through courageous faith in his Son, Jesus Christ, you can be forgiven of your sins and made new and given a place in his great story of redemption. Amen.